What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central podcast. And there's really not a lot of shortcuts to sugarcoat how pathetic the Mets were this series in Seattle. Thankfully, I didn't end up watching a good majority of it because I ended up being busy and actually entertaining myself doing other things. But yeah, there's really there's no sugarcoating how bad this was because they got one run in the entire series. The second game, they did not get a runner in scoring position. And this all dates back. And I hate to do this because we had the same exact conversation in 2022 that we were underwhelmed by the deadline. We said, all right, let's see how it plays out, but is this good enough? And you look back and you say, no. And I can't help but wonder, because this also goes back to a conversation that I've had multiple times of why, like, I still don't understand to this day why teams bother conservative buying, quote unquote, because what is the point of getting slightly better when everyone around you is getting better? To me, I'd rather either go all for buying or go all for selling, and there were guys with control that they could have got. You look at a guy on the other side of the baseball diamond in this series like Randy Arozarena and how he could turn the tides of multiple games and how he was very effective for Seattle. You put that bat into the lineup and that could have changed things starting pitching wise. Granted, the starters, Quintana actually wasn't terrible, all things considered, but Manaea, Severino, not good. This is why we beat the drum for a quality starting pitcher to be added to the rotation. But it seems like the Senga injury changed their course, and it just bothers me that we're sitting here in this spot that we're in now where this is just what it is. And then you have the front office who somehow comes to the conclusion after the first game, Ottavino, barely gets through his little bit of work there he had against Seattle in the first game. Alex Young has a solid inning of work. Somehow the front office came to the conclusion where, hey, you know what? Maybe Ottavino's right. It would be foolish to let him go. So Alex Young, who's been pitching well for us since acquiring him, pack your bags for Syracuse because that's where you're headed. I just don't understand. I get he had a minor league option and Ottavino doesn't, but you've watched Ottavino pitch multiple months now for this team. I don't know how you come to the conclusion that what he's doing is good enough. Jesse Winker has been such a dud of a deadline ad, and they're trying to put him in spots in the lineup that just does not make sense for him. Hitting him third, fourth in the lineup. Why are we even bothering with a guy that has a guy that strikes out way too much? There's so many holes in his swing, which is what I warned fans about because, yeah, it's great that he's going to come here and see more pitches, but if his game is drawing walks for the most part, how is it going to affect him when he's actually seeing good pitches and he doesn't have the bat speed to catch up to them? Brandon Nimmo has been an embarrassment since the All-Star break. Since the All-Star break, his numbers currently, I'll read them to you guys right now in the second half. And right now, he has in the second half, a 50 WRC plus. To put that in perspective, that is 50 WRC plus points away from the league average. He has a WOBA of 232. He's hitting 152, 284 on base, 190 slugging, 474 OPS, but nobody's going to rip on him the way that Lindor got ripped on at the beginning of the season for some reason because, homegrown talent, let's, defend the guy to the grave. He's been dog shit, needs to be a lot better. And then you look at JD Martinez, who's showing his age as of lately. Pete Alonso, great. Played solid against the Rockies, and then it's right back to square one with him. The only other guy that I could look at and say, you know what, they've been playing at least respectable outside of Francisco Lindor is Jeff McNeil. Outside of that, Vientos, not looked good as of lately. Harrison Bader, it is what it is with the guy. I mean, even Ben Gamble's giving you better at bats still than guys like Nimmo, Martinez, and Alonso, which again, you circle back and say, this is where you needed to add another quality bat to the lineup. I'm done ranting. I needed that for the first 5 minutes of the show. And I apologize, but on your way in, leave a like, subscribe. Matt, I'll turn it over to you for you to get the floor to yap and rant for a couple minutes.
Well, yeah, look, that series was embarrassing to say the least. To quote John Tortorella, they sucked from head to toe. No excuses. And listen, I understand that the Mariners have arguably one of the best pitching staffs in the MLB. And guys like Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, they're all three very good pitchers. All three of them. And their bullpen is very good as well. But that's not an excuse. Now, look, I know a lot of people have questioned David Stearns and the lack of impact that the trade deadline might have had so far on the roster. But look, I'm not going to go complete in on David Stearns because I still trust the guy. And listen, he got depth guys for little to he gave up little to next to nothing in terms of value. So in terms of that, I'll say okay, and I get it. Guys like Jesse Winker have not performed. I'm not going to completely kill him because at the end of the day, I view him as a depth piece, a guy to just replace DJ Stewart. However, he still needs to be a lot better. He has not had a couple. He's not had a lot of not a lot of good at bats so far. But the guys that need to be blamed, and it was the same reason why I didn't get on Stearns earlier in the year when the Mets were severely struggling, is because the top guys are not performing. Brandon Nimmo, you just read out the stats. He's been horrible. And you know what? He probably has to take the most blame because you know what? He was out there front and center when he had that interview with Steve Gelbs on the field, and he told Stearns and Cohen, "We want you to buy at the deadline." Well, okay, they did that, but you're not backing that up. They did what you asked them to do, and now you're playing like shit. And you know what? You are one of the leaders on the team. You have to take responsibility for that. So you know what? Start fucking performing. Because if you want to validate the decision and you want to make the playoffs, well, you know what? Batting around 150 and with a 400 OPS, that ain't gonna cut it. Pete Alonso, Mr. Supposedly All-Star. Bro, that was a Fugazi All-Star appearance. You know it, I know it. Shut the fuck up. I don't care that you hit 2 home runs off a shitty Rockies pitching staff. Stop chasing sliders and curveballs out of the zone. It's the same thing for JD Martinez. It's the same thing with Francisco Alvarez. Now, look, I'm not going to kill Francisco Alvarez as much because he's still a young guy and he's still going to develop, but he has to take some blame as well. I just don't get the batting approaches these guys have. You know that your main weakness up there is sliders and curveballs out of the zone, and you know that's what the opposing pitcher is going to throw to you early in the count. So how about you change up your approach and say, okay, they're going to feed me this early on the count. Let me take some pitches so I get ahead in the count. Then maybe the opposing pitcher is going to realize that and change their approach. And then maybe you might just get some hittable pitches early on the count that you could take advantage of. And another thing, the fucking ground balls. How many ground balls is this team going to hit? We've said it in multiple podcasts before this series. The reason why the Mets lineup was probably the most dangerous lineup in June and July when they were on their hot streak was because they were hitting the ball in the air. They were hitting home runs. And why did teams in the past, like the Phillies, Astros, Braves, Rays, Dodgers, why did those teams go deep in the playoffs? Because they hit the ball in the air and they hit home runs. Ground balls ain't going to do it anymore. This team is reverting back to the 21, 22, 23 offense that we saw before. It's not good enough. It has to change. And you know what? The series sweep sucks, right? And that's not acceptable. But you know what? Even I would have accepted a series loss if they only just took care of business against the Rockies and the Angels. They went 4-6 on this road trip. 6 of those games were against the Rockies and Angels. They got 3 wins from those two teams. 3. Because the other one was against the Cardinals in that makeup game. Not good enough. That is unacceptable. I said 7-3 was the acceptable record I would have taken. You went 4-6. Not good enough. Now look, you have a chance to make this up, right? Because now you come home. You have a 9-game homestand. 3 against the A's, 3 against the Marlins, 3 against the Orioles. Anything less than 7-2 on this homestand is not acceptable. You need to sweep the A's. You need to sweep the Marlins. The Orioles, tough team. I get that. Try to win a game. Maybe win the series. But you know what? Take care of business against a bad A's team and a bad Marlins team. Go 6-0 against those teams. And then we'll see what happens with the Orioles.
And with the hitting conversation, by the end of this year, because David Stern supposedly said this is an evaluation year or whatever, Eric Chavez has to go by the end of this year. Like, I've seen enough from the guy to know that he's not a quality coach and that he's not going to be ready for quite a long time to be a quality manager. So this is what Eric Chavez said on the Scoring Woes. This was on August 11th. He said, every team has these kind of road trips. The makeup game, whatever, we could come up with excuses, but I think the combination of the road trip and the Mariners are good at pitching, that kind of took over. Okay, so I'm not making excuses, but then you proceed to make excuses, first of all. Second of all, that doesn't excuse you from the fact that you struggled to score runs against the Angels, who have terrible pitching. So what's the excuse there? What's the excuse for the fact that, in general, you're the guy that's supposed to help these guys have the plate approach they need to have, help these guys be prepared on a day-to-day basis? It makes no sense how this guy's employed right now, considering the fact that it took JD Martinez coming in to have them be like, yeah, let's use weighted bats in batting practice. This was not an Eric Chavez driven thing. And all of a sudden they started doing that, and then they started going off on a hot streak and all of a sudden put themselves in the playoff mix again. It just makes no sense what this guy does on a day-to-day basis. He had to take a step back from being the bench coach last year because it was too much for him. I mean, this guy is not mentally prepared to be on a coaching staff, and we saw it enough with the 2022 offense. And like you said, we're seeing the same exact issues from that 2022 offense. We're seeing it repeat right in front of our own eyes down the stretch here in the crunch time when it's the most important. We're seeing the same exact hitting woes, the same exact issues that lost them the division that year and that caused them to lose to the Padres the way they did. And right now, quite frankly, I don't know if things change. Is coming home really going to save you of anything? Because that seems to be the excuse. And even then, I mean, for an offense that's supposed to be as explosive as the Mets did, outside of that third game against Colorado, was anyone really impressed with the way the offense performed in Coors Field? Because I sure as hell wasn't. I wasn't impressed with the way they performed in Anaheim. So talking up to the road trip and Seattle having good pitching is just kind of nonsense to me. It's like, is coming home really going to change that? And by the way, I got news for you, Eric, but there's a road trip coming up after this homestand, and this is a more important road trip than that one just was. And the fact that you're even in the mix after that poor of a road trip is pretty impressive. And that's where, like you mentioned, they have to salvage this with a big homestand, and anything under, I mean, 7-2 is probably the outside of obviously undefeated. That is like one of the best case scenarios. I say at worst, you could get 6 wins here. You have to take care of business, and it sucks even more that the Braves were struggling against the Rockies and you couldn't take advantage of that. It sucks even more that the Phillies continue to be in a downward spiral, and you add just even 2 more wins to what you had. You're talking that this team's at 63 wins ahead of the Braves. That changes things drastically, and you are 6 games out of the division. And think about how those 7 games against the Phillies in September could have changed things. And we said 7 wins. Imagine they're sitting 64 and whatever right now, only 5 games back of the Phillies, and they are in like the thick of things with the wild card, potentially fighting it out. And then they have that road trip with the Padres and Diamondbacks, and they have an opportunity to really cement themselves as legit contenders. Now it's like I look at this team and I say to myself, how do I expect things to change when too many guys are slumping right now? Is everybody all of a sudden going to fire it on all cylinders because they're coming home to Citi Field? And the last thing I'll say before I turn it back to you with the Winker thing, my problem is this with viewing him as a depth piece. They're thrusting him into a spot where he's not a depth player. And that's where I look at it and question, why did you not get more if he is going to be hitting this high in the lineup? I don't get it, because to me, when he got here, the plan was always to hit him in the top 5 of the order. They could have done better. But that's just me. We could whine about that all we want. It really doesn't matter. What's done is done. And all that matters now is the top guys at the end of the day. They have to turn around, especially against, like you said, some poor opponents. But we said that going into the road trip that they faced lighter opponents. So who the hell knows?
Yeah, I get that about the Winker thing. Listen, I think he, like I said before, I view him as a depth piece, but he still has to play a lot better than this because his performances have not been good. Yeah, he had that one game in Colorado, and I think it was the second game where he went 3 for 5. Other than that, though, and maybe the first couple games of the Twin series, hasn't been that impressive. Now, look, maybe there needs to be another batting order change. Brandon Nimmo maybe has to be, not maybe, he definitely has to be dropped in the order again.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, his play has been unacceptable. Jesse Winker, drop him in the order again. Maybe promote a guy like Francisco Alvarez or Mark Vientos up to 2. I don't know. Get them going somehow. It worked with Lindor. You pushed them up to 1. Or you pushed them up to the leadoff spot, and it worked. Try something else with these other guys because as of now, it's not working. And look, Lindor, while he hasn't been exactly the same guy that he was last month, he's still been good, though. He's the only guy for me that could leave that Seattle Mariners series with his head held up high. Because you know what? He had 5 hits in that series. And yeah, I get it. He made a bad error. I think it was the 5th inning of the final game of that series. Look, it happens. He's a Gold Glove guy, but mistakes will happen. It sucked that it was on that play because right after that, Cal Raleigh hit a home run off Severino to make it 4-0. But look, it happens, and he's still performing with his bat. It's down to the other guys. Like I said before, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, JD Martinez, Francisco Alvarez. Those guys need to step up. If not, then, well, the playoffs are slowly going to start to fade away for this Mets team. And if those guys don't start to continue if they don't start to perform again, then David Stern's going to have some easy decisions to make at the offseason. That includes letting a guy like JD Martinez go, definitely letting Pete Alonso go. Because I'm telling you right now, if this guy wants anywhere near $200 million, well, he can kiss my ass. He can fuck off to LA and let Artie Moreno overpay him. Because I ain't paying him. He's not good enough. And you know that contract's not going to age well.
No.
It's not going to age well. And then there's the conversation we need to have about the pitching staff because we praised Shaw Mania on the last podcast, but that last performance, oof, it was terrible, not good at all. In those 2 starts against the Twins and the Cardinals, he went combined 14 innings. He had 1 walk. He had 5 walks in that game against the Mariners. 5. His fastball wasn't the same as it was before because if you watch the Twins and Cardinals game, his fastball up in the zone was sitting at about 95, 96 mile an hour. And early on in that Mariners game, his fastball was only clocking at about 93 miles an hour. So he didn't have his fastball that game at all. And you could tell he was getting hit hard. Since he didn't have the fastball and he wasn't getting a lot of swings and misses on that, he had to try and maneuver around the strike zone, which then caused him to walk guys. Sevy, then, on the other hand, he was mid at best. Like, wasn't terrible, wasn't great either. But that's the trend we've been seeing with Sevy for the last couple weeks now, where he's being just mid, and he has to be a lot better than this. And surprisingly, Jose Quintana was the best pitcher out of all 3 of them. Apart from that hanging curveball that he threw in the second inning, he was good. He gave you 6 innings. But again, it's part of the reason. It's part of the reason why we were asking for a big time ace at the deadline, because there is no one on this staff right now that you could say is their ace. There is no one. Yes, Shamanaya, Severino, Quintana, they could give you good starts here and there. But can they do it consistently? Because in the playoffs, if they do make it, that rotation is gonna get pulled down to 3 guys, 4 guys at most. So you're gonna have a lot of starts. And do they have the consistency to every 4 days go out there and pitch well? No, they don't.
Nope.
And too bad the San Francisco Giants are, just being mid right now because Blake Snell would have looked really nice as the ace of the staff right now.
Yeah, especially considering he's like close to throwing no hitters left and right. And I'm sorry, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear about how the A's have a lineup that could be lethal and everything. I really don't care. I'm sorry, I don't. They're 19 games below 500 for a reason, and congratulations, they're not White Sox bad. Like, the White Sox are on a whole different planet of bad, so I really don't care. They're the worst team in the AL outside of the White Sox. They're the fourth worst team record-wise in the entire MLB for a reason. And if the Mets want to show that they are a legit team, they have to at the very least take 2 out of 3. Like, it is unacceptable to drop this series if they want to be in a playoff spot. But I mean, I would say a sweep's kind of more mandatory at this rate, considering how they pissed away their opportunity against the Angels and the Rockies. But I just don't want to hear that today. I really don't. And with the lineup change thing, I want to go back to that conversation briefly. I'll say this, to Mendoza's defense, there's really not much he could do with the lineup that's different that could spark anything. Like, the only guys that are hitting right now are Lindor and McNeil. Like, what do you do? Move McNeil to the 2-hole and then, try to ride it out there? Sure, you could try it, but Nimmo definitely has to be moved out. And I'll say this, if Nimmo has a terrible series here against the A's and the Marlins, I'm at the point where Mendoza should just bench him in that Baltimore series. Show discipline, show balls, and set him for the Baltimore series. I don't care about hurting anyone's feelings. I don't care about, the Orioles are a good team. You got to have your best hitters name-wise. I don't care at that point. You have to send a message, whether it's benching him for the first 2 games or all 3, I don't care. And make a statement by putting Ben Gamel in the lineup over him. Make that much of a statement, or hopefully maybe Starling Marte will be back by then, and you could just tell Nimmo, sit your ass down, and you sit him for that Baltimore series. But hopefully we don't have to get to that, get there, and hopefully he could just perform over these next 2 series. But I don't know, I'm losing my patience to the point where he is unplayable with those numbers that I listed off at the top of the show. He is unplayable right now. Like, it's worse than league average. It's Jeff McNeil numbers that we were talking about when we said he's unplayable. So if he's not performing after those few games, he's got to sit. Like, it's to that degree. And then with the pitching staff, like you mentioned, I mean, they need to be a lot better. The bullpen needs to be better. Stanek he was terrible in his appearance. Reed Garrett at least looked good. Brazaban at least looked good. Maton looked good. Danny Young looked terrible in that most recent performance. But I'm getting to the point where it's like, are they running his arm into the damn ground here? Because he worked 2 innings and then he got a day off, worked the second game of the series, looked good, and then worked the third game of the series and got cooked. He they're running his arm into the ground like they did with Reed Garrett before. And then Phil Maton at least looked good. I'm not too worried with the bullpen as much as, Ottavino and Stanek really are bothering me right now. You have more help on the way, whether it's Sean Reed-Foley, Dednell Nunez will be here at some point. So I'm not overly concerned there. But they do need to let Ottavino go because this is just terrible. But starting pitching-wise, you need better. And Blackburn, you know what? He's given volume thus far, so maybe he does here tonight, which is what's really important. They need volume from somebody badly. Like, I'm talking 7 innings is needed from Paul Blackburn tonight. Will they get that? Probably not. You're probably looking at more 6, which I'll take. But this is where, again, they needed that ace that could give them 7 innings, night in and night out, every 5th day. Give the innings to give the bullpen a rest, because that's when I will get worried about the bullpen, is if guys are getting taxed left and right. That's what it is. And the Mets can't hit bad pitching, and that is what they're facing. Then they don't deserve to make the playoffs. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, mostly your thoughts. I want your thoughts on the Nimmo benching idea.
I'm all for it. If he don't perform against this Ace team and this Port Marlins team, then you know what? Tough shit, Brandon. You're one of the leaders on this team, and you know what? The leaders have to be held the most accountable. You have you're one of the highest paid players on the team as well. Sorry, you wanna have the responsibilities on your shoulder. Well, then you have to take the most criticism, and you have to deal with the backlash of poor performances. It's not good enough, and you know what? Maybe with Starling Marte coming back, because I'm sure he's gonna have a chip on his shoulder to prove that he can stay healthy, even though I have severe doubts about that. But you know, if Marte's gonna come back and he's gonna hit, well then I'm sorry, Nemo. Your ass is gonna be glued to the bench because you know what? Right now, Harrison Bader looks a lot more better than you at the plate right now. Marte will see, and shit, even fucking Tyrone Taylor looks like he's having better at bats than Brandon Nemo
Taylor
so
and
far.
Gamble are both hitting better than him.
I mean, what are we doing here? But then, yeah, look, like I said, if he continues with this poor at bats, I'm all for it. I don't care. Send a message. Send a message. And then I mean, look with the other guys. Um, yeah, shout out Reed Garrett because he looked impressive on his first appearance off the IL. I really missed that splitter, man. It looked so good. I mean, he struck out the side as well, so that's all like you could really ask for in terms of Reed Garrett right there. But yeah, in terms of Blackburn tonight, look, would I love it if you can go 7 innings? Yeah, but look, if you give me 6 innings, I take that because especially with the day off yesterday, like you have guys that are rested. I know Budo didn't pitch that series at all, unless like I'm blanking because I really stopped paying attention a lot of those games
No, he
midway
didn't
through.
pitch.
Yeah, he didn't
Just
pitch
put
at
him back in
all.
the rotation.
Diaz didn't pitch at all, so he's rested. Um, Yeah, so they have guys that are rested, and then in terms of going back to that Danny Young point, they probably are running his arm to the ground because, like you said, pitched 2 innings in Colorado, pitched 2 innings in Seattle, then pitched in the final game of the series. We're seeing the same thing that they did to Reed Garrett. And you know what? It sucks because he's the only lefty right now in the bullpen, and he has to do the majority of the work. Too bad that I still don't understand why they just didn't get rid of Adam Ottavino. I didn't get it. Yeah, I get it. Alex Young has the option, but you know what? What value does Adam Ottavino contribute to this bullpen?
He
Nothing.
doesn't finish
He,
innings.
he can't pitch high leverage, medium leverage, low leverage, whatever fucking leverage you want to throw out there. Adam Ottavino cannot pitch. Like you said, he can't finish an inning. How many times?
Wait, no, he had a good 8 inning
Uh,
run. By the way, he pitched good for 8 consecutive innings. That's why.
I'm sorry. Let me shut up. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I
that
just I just don't get it. Like I mentioned on my post game that I did, who gave this guy Jacob Trouba's phone number or email or however the fuck whether they do fucking bird pigeon and letter. I don't care how they communicate. Cut that shit off immediately. I don't care like how foolish it is to let me go. No, Adam, you suck. That's about it. You were a good relief pitcher in 2022, but apart from that, your ass. Like to point to put that blunt and simply, your ass. You got to go.
yeah, he has to have some sort of dirt on David Stearns at this point because I just don't understand. I want to say this right now, too. Since the All-Star break, Ben Gamel and Brandon Nimmo have the same amount of home runs. That's 0. 0 home runs. Ben Gamel in 11 at-bats has 4 hits. For Nimmo in 79 at-bats, he has 12 hits. So Ben Gamel in those at-bats also has, in 14 plate appearances, I should say, he has 3 walks. Nimmo in 95 plate appearances has 15 walks. I don't know what to tell you. Other than this is, again, it's just unacceptable from him. And we'll shift gears though, fully to the pitching because we haven't gave it enough love and time yet. But with Jose Budo, I don't think they're moving him back to the rotation. But God, would I love if that's why he's getting this long of a rest, because they desperately need a guy like that back in the rotation to give volume, most importantly. But again, I've just accepted that it's not going to happen. So I could wish for it as much as I want. It kind of is what it is. But yeah, you have Blackburn for this game, Peterson game 2, and then who's lined up for the third game?
Probably Quintana.
Quintana, yeah. Ugh. So I don't know. So that just tells me he's not going to be back, but in the rotation. But yeah, I don't get still how they came to the conclusion that Ottavino's better. I just said though before, I have faith in the bullpen, and the bullpen proved this series. And again, I know that Stanek and Ottavino are the exceptions; they sucked. But outside of those two, you got enough quality, I feel like, to prove that you could put Budo back in the rotation. But again, it's not gonna happen. I could keep wishing it won't happen, but with this pitching, I don't know what happens down the stretch here anymore. But I would like Alex Young to get called back up already. I would love Denno Nunez to come back already, but again, I think they're just trying to drag this until September. I don't even know if he's thrown yet, so it really doesn't matter. I don't even know what's happening with Sean Reed Foley right now. I don't know how much he has left on his rehab assignment, so
I think he has one more game left in rehab, and Denel Nunes hasn't started throwing yet. But I think he's supposed to soon, I think in about a week or two.
okay, so September. So it's lining up to be he's just up. September call up, Denel Nunez. I don't know. I mean, if Stanek stinks again for a bit, then Sean Reed Foley should take either his spot or Ottavino's, and then like those two are specifically the guys I'm looking at that potentially need to go, because I've liked what I've seen enough from Maton to keep him around. Budo's a staple, Diaz a staple, Reed Garrett gave a solid inning of work. I'm glad they gave him that rest. Even Danny Young, again, I know he wasn't good in that last game, but they're running his arm into the ground. It kind of is what it is. Maybe there's a Phantom IL stint on the horizon, and that's what they end up doing. And then Brazaban, even, again, outside of that game in Anaheim, I've liked what I've seen from him. And then Scott started throwing. What's going to happen with him? I don't know what the answer is. I really don't know what the answer is pitching-wise. But obviously it has to come from within. And I don't know what the roster looks like, though, is really more what I'm getting at with that.
If Scott comes back before the end of the season, the answer is simple. Because like we said before, with Danny Young being ran into the ground right now, you only have one lefty in that bullpen. It's easy. You put Scott back in the rotation. You move Peterson to the bullpen and get rid of Adam Ottavino. And then we'll see what they do with the other moves, in terms of who they get rid of with Nunez coming in and Sean Reed Foley coming in. Because if Stanek continues to pitch this poorly, then you know what? He's going to get moved out. It's simple as that. And we've seen Stearns be ruthless earlier on this season, especially with guys like Phil with Michael Tonka and stuff. If you're not pitching, you're not, and the same applied to Diekman too. It took a little bit, but just because they didn't have a lot of lefty options, but eventually Diekman was Stearns got rid of him. So we've seen that Stearns is ruthless when it comes to the bullpen. You're not performing, then you're gonna go. Unless your name is Adam Ottavino and you just got dirt on David Stearns. But other than that, I don't know. But or even then, because I could even see a situation where they are concerned with Scott's arm. Because here's the thing, right? If Scott's not like 100% and he's still feeling something in that arm, I would just not even put him back. Like, unless he's like completely healthy and he's feeling nothing, don't throw him out there, because I don't want to risk his arm. I don't. Because if he's hurting and your solution is then just going to a 6-man rotation to give him some extra rest in between starts, nah, man. Like I said, he has to be completely healthy, no pain in his arm whatsoever or his elbow. Put him in the 5-man rotation and move Peterson to the bullpen.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can't take chances here with his arm. I don't know. I'm more inclined to put him in the bullpen right now, just because I don't want to risk burning his arm out here down the stretch. But then again, it also is back to the conversation of this rotation desperately needs help. That Senga injury, man. That Senga injury really freaking hurt the vibes and everything with this team.
Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, but you know what? I don't want to hear that the Sanga injury brought down the morale of the team and the confidence of the team, because you know what?
Oh, I agree.
The,
I don't
the
want to hear it,
Braves,
but
the Braves in 2021 lost Ronald Acuna for the year. They still went on to win the World Series.
oh, I'm
Like
not
I don't.
disagreeing, but
No, no, no.
it
I
just
know.
feels like it.
No, I know, but I'm just saying. And listen, I love Kodai Senga. I love him. Great pitcher. But you know what? Ronald Acuna is a lot more valuable than Kodai Senga is to the Mets. And that's not a shot at Kodai Senga. Ronald Acuna is an everyday player. He's an NL MVP candidate every single year. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and they lost Strider this year, and they're still contending for a spot. So yeah, I don't disagree with that. It just unfortunately the way it is. And I hate when that happens in sports in general. When one guy goes down and the entire ship sinks. But that's unfortunately where we are right now. But yeah, I don't think I really have much else to discuss in terms of topics because this series was just such a dud. And there's really not much to have a conversation about. We kind of already previewed the A series. So if you have anything else you want to bring up, I'm open for a conversation since we're only at like 40 minutes. But um, I don't know if I have anything else to say. I'm just pissed off, and they have to turn this shit around starting tonight.
No, definitely. And like I said before, anything less than 7-2 on this homestand ain't good enough. Sweep the A's, sweep the Marlins. We'll see what happens with the Orioles. Because let me tell you, they need a good homestand right here. Because then they go on the road. 4 games with the Padres, 3 games with the Diamondbacks, 3 games with the White Sox. Let me tell you, those first 7 games against the Padres and Diamondbacks could very well end their season right there. Very well. Because I don't know what kind of magic the Padres have going on right now, because they just seem to win every fucking game. It doesn't matter the situation. They could be down 3 runs in the ninth inning, 4 runs, 2 runs. It doesn't matter. It just seems like they're coming back every single game and winning. And the Diamondbacks, defending defending National League champions of last year, good as well. They've been on a hot streak as well. So take advantage of the lighter opponents in this homestand. Like I said, we'll see what happens with the Orioles, and then get ready to go out to the West Coast. Because let me tell you, if you think you could just roll up to Arizona and San Diego like you did in the Seattle series, oh well, we will be in for a rough stretch, because those 7 games will be painful.
Yep. Yeah, it pretty much. I mean, you could argue even this homestand could potentially damage the season because if they can't even at the very least tread water here, then it's a problem. And sadly for the Padres, I'm really the only hope of hexing them at this point. Put a little cash on them to win the World Series, put a little cash on them to win the division. So hopefully I hex them in that regard because that's really the only hope at this rate. So I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part. The Mets have to do their part though and start to perform because there's only so much I could do if that ends up being the case. Maybe I'll put money on the Padres in every game in that series against the Mets. Maybe I'll have to do something on those lines. But in all seriousness, yeah, that could determine the series or the season rather. And if it's not that, it will probably just, of course, come down to the end of September when they're in Atlanta because it just always seems like things die there. But I think you're more realistically looking at this unless, again, it's just treading water and they just somehow keep themselves afloat to be one game, half a game, or in by up a game, anything of that nature. But yeah, just please take care of business. I think that's really all there is. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up at all before I end it?
No, that was about it. Brandon Nemo, Pete Alonso, JD Martinez, Francisco Alvarez, you better get your head out of your ass. Because if you can't perform this series, then there needs to be some serious conversations to be had.
Yeah, and potentially 2 out of those 3 could be gone in the offseason if they don't get their shit together this series. But that is going to be it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you haven't. Don't forget to subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. There will be post games, of course, throughout the course of the series here from myself. And then come Thursday or Friday, either Thursday night or Friday afternoon, there will be a podcast episode, and then I will be out of town. So after that Friday night Marlins game, Matt will be covering the post games until I come back on probably the 24th, because I will probably not be able to stay awake on that plane ride home on the 23rd. So I'll be sleeping, watching the Mets either get their dog walked by the Padres, or hopefully my hexing works. So that's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.